When we ask a client at the beginning of a review, are there any agencies you'd like us to consider? They can't name any 95% of the time.
We're in our own world because we're reading the trades and looking at all the ad age lists, and
they're reading their publications for around their business.
And we're like, oh, every CMO is looking at this, but really they have no idea who the agencies are, right?
Your agency acting like a brand is so critically important. It's probably one of the areas that agencies, by and large, are weakest at.
In today's world, how does a brand break through the noise and become iconic? Join me, Jason Harris, as I speak with the world's leading marketing experts about how they use soul and science to build an iconic brand. Think of it as EQ meeting IQ. So let's lock in and together fast forward our marketing minds on the Soul and Science podcast. Welcome to the podcast. On today's episode of Soul and Science, I'm joined by Stephen and Robin Boehler, founders and partners at Mercer Island Group and authors of It's Not About You, Winning New Business in a Crowded Agency World. My book has not come yet, so I'm going to ask them questions about the book, but it's a book that I'm desperately excited to dig into. And we will, in this conversation, dig into why the agencies that win stop performing for prospects and start truly understanding them. And we'll explore that mindset and the chemistry behind client-centric growth in an increasing harder and harder and noisier competitive market. Welcome to the podcast, Stephen and Robin.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Of course. Before we get into the book, I want to roll back the clock and talk a little bit about how you started working together and the history of Mercer Island Group.
I think you're going to get both of us in this answer because we started the business in back in 1990. I had been a CPG executive. I was looking for what was next. I didn't want to move anymore. We were in Seattle after I'd spent a decade at Procter & Gamble in brand management, ran a division of Weyerhaeuser as a president, and then it was time to do something else. We immediately got a client while I was trying to figure out what to do, which was Weyerhaeuser, that I was leaving the company. And our first project was to help Microsoft with an agency review. And so I looked at Robin and said, okay, how do we do that? And so we sort of figured it out. I'd managed agencies for years, and she has a gift for working with people and understanding challenges and problems. And I'll let her explain a little bit now about how she came into the business to help out.
Reluctantly is how I came into the business to help out, because I was doing other things. I was working in the public sector, saving the world. So when we talked about figuring out how to do an agency review, we literally made it up, which is something I think men do really well. They'll say, yes, I can do that. What is it? And women say, well, I need to study it and really understand it before I can decide if I'm qualified to do it. So good for Steve. He accepted the challenge, and then we figured out how to do it. That was the beginning of creating the process to figure out how to match make between agencies and clients. And we refined that process, literally refined it every time we did it. And I would suggest that we still do. Every time we do an agency review, we still change the process just a little, or, definitively decide that this thing is bulletproof and we shouldn't change, that kind of conversation.
How'd you guys come up with the name?
Well, we live on Mercer Island, so that was an easy one.
Consultancies are usually named after people or places.
Nothing magical.
Boehler is rough to spell, rough to pronounce. And Mercer Island sounded a little exotic at the time.
And what is the best thing about working together?
Well, I can answer that. We have very complementary skill sets, and we trust each other implicitly.
My answer is I get to travel with my best friend, and otherwise I'd be away from home so many nights that it would be unbearable.
I'll have to work on my answer.
Robin had a much better answer.
I'm used to that.
And what is the hardest thing about working together?
We never turn it off. That's the hardest thing. It really is hard to turn it off. We're talking about work all the time, even when we're sitting watching TV. There's times I'll pause whatever we're watching, say, hey, let's talk about this thing that's in my head from earlier today. It's really hard to turn it off.
Wow, that's crazy.
It's not an issue, but there's definitely it keeps the ceiling a little lower on how much work we can get done because we both like working together on the same things.
Right, right.
So there's not quite as much coverage, but I actually think it makes the work much better, and that's good for business, and we enjoy what we do. So that I'm living a charmed existence here.
What was the kind of impetus to decide you wanted to put it into a book? You wanted to create a guidebook. Was it because you had so much knowledge you wanted to put down on paper? Was it because you see agencies making the same mistake over and over? Because I know you guys, you post a lot about what the topic of the book is on LinkedIn and such. Why did you guys look at each other and say, let's write a book together?
A lot of people told us we should write a book. So, if 3 people tell you you're drunk, you lay down, right? So eventually it became, maybe we should write a book. And then, all the reasons that you just suggested, Jason, were those reasons. We see agencies make the same mistakes over and over again. And there's only so much coverage that we can have through Steve's LinkedIn posts. I write an occasional LinkedIn post, but they're really Steve's LinkedIn posts. There's only so much coverage we can get. And what we heard from some agency biz dev people that came to workshops that we did was that back in the day when we used to hand out, written copies of our presentations. Remember those days when you used to give a bound copy of your presentation? People would say to us, I use this as a guidebook for biz dev. And so it was there, right? The idea of it was the way that we talk to agencies is in ways that can actually help them, things that they can activate. And I'll give credit to Drew McClellan from the Agency Management Institute. When we first presented to his group, we talked about, theory and marketing and industry trends. And he said, can you make it actionable to my agencies? And that was a big unlock. Like that's a differentiator. We don't just talk about the theory. We can tell you literally what to do differently that will get you a better result. And that's what we decided to do.
What are some common about us mistakes you see agencies constantly making? And I know you cover it in the book, but what are the repeated ones that most agencies make?
Oh, there's so many. One is bringing creative, if it's a creative pitch or a creative assignment without any strategy, just coming in and showing creative, and there's no way for the client to be able to evaluate it. So in pitching, if an agency shows up and they haven't done the homework around who the target audience is and what the competition is, what the brand stands for, and land on some kind of an insight that's going to drive the creative, then it's all just subjective. I don't like blue, or I don't like that word.
That's surprising. Yeah.
Yeah. We see it a lot.
Okay.
So that's a big one, especially. And it's same thing in media. If you bring media plan without showing the strategy behind it, do I think 60% or 30% for that channel? I don't know. Now we're just having a debate over tactical things that are completely subjective. So that's a huge mistake agencies make.
Yeah, I would suggest also that often they're not really solving the real problem that the client has. They haven't done enough research. They haven't asked all the right questions. They haven't gotten under the skin of the client enough to understand, for instance, the why behind the why, or what's really going on with the client. And so they may be sort of responding to the RFP or to the pitch at just the base level, like all the other agencies, when there's really other important stuff going on with the client. And clients have really hard jobs. And this is understanding our starting point. And when we talk to agencies about how to pitch better, is to absolutely make sure you understand what the real business issue is that the client has to solve, not what the new campaign has to be or the new media plan. That's all. Of course, that becomes important, but it's really what's going on with the business that leads the client to need an agency and to need to invest.
Yeah, because often the client brief won't get into the real issues. It'll just say what the need is, right? And so you have to do some digging to find out what's behind the need. And a lot of agencies maybe just take the brief and go from there. What about, I know, like, showing case studies and doing your positioning and all of that is important, but all of that stuff is about you stuff. But you also need to do it, right? So how do you kind of, square the circle on that? If you're presenting what makes us different, here's a relevant case study, but you're talking about yourself, how do you make that about them?
So it's a really great question. I think all the stuff about doing the work for yourselves, right? The positioning, getting your case studies in order, making sure your website's really friendly for the user, the prospect that's coming. All of that is work that is about the agency, but it's in the context of how do we show up in a way that is interesting to clients. And it's the stuff that you do that gets you noticed, that hopefully gets you on the list. It's the stuff that you do, content programs when you're writing. It's all stuff that you're doing in order to be able to get noticed or remembered or thought of when a client is looking for a new agency. But each one of those things in and of itself, even though it's for your agency, can't just be about you. So here's an example. When you do your agency positioning, it has to be about something that is relevant or interesting to a prospect. So Soul and Science is a good example, right? Mechanism, Soul and Science. So on its face, Soul and Science doesn't tell me anything about business results. But if I dive into Soul and Science, what it tells me is that there's something emotional happening at this agency that's driven by data. And so that gives me confidence that there's going to be something hard there to match the softness around the creative emotional side, right brain, left brain, to get to something that's be good for my business. So even though Soul and Science it's not literal, it is absolutely figuratively talking the language that clients want to hear as you talk about it.
And then when you tell agencies this, but then you see the same mistakes popping up over and over, do you think that's because their ego's getting in the way? Do you think that's because it's the way they've always done it? Is it they don't really believe that clients don't want to hear about them? Like, why do you think you've had this knowledge? You say it repeatedly, you put it in a book. What is the stubbornness of agencies?
I think part of it is it's really hard and frightening to simply have a business conversation with a prospect. It's much easier to have a presentation prepared where you're going through an agenda and you've got different segments, you've got a bunch of slides where in essence you're either talking about yourself or often mostly talking about your experiences on behalf of other clients. And I think so that there's a quarter turn adjustment that's really important here for agencies, which is to figure out how to make sure that their touch points with clients, with prospects, when they're having a meeting, they're having a call, the focus is on that client's or prospect's problem and having that conversation first and making sure that you really understand it. Because if you do a really good job on that part, either uncovering and elevating issues that they want to hear about, and helping give them thoughts about how to solve those problems. Now you're talking about them. You're talking about how you can help them. At some point, they may then want to hear about a related case study, but it's probably then very specific to the conversation you just had, as opposed to, hey, Mr. Prospect, we are such a good agency. Boy, do I have some dandy case studies for you, which may not be relevant at all to where the prospect is. That is the hard part. And it takes skill and effort, experience, some gravitas in the room to pull that off. But that's the thing. That's sort of the run to daylight for most agencies.
What are the reasons that you see repeatedly clients select an agency in a pitch process? Is it that they did that digging and they're really trying to solve their business problem? Is it a silver bullet creative solution that an agency had? Is it, well, I just really want to work with these guys because I like them?
It is a combination of everything. So I want to say that, and I would also be lying if I said I've never seen a client choose an agency based on the creative. I that would be a lie, but it is the rare occasion when we didn't like much else, but the creative was just so on. No, I mean it's so rare that it's not even worth spending a lot of time on. The major winning factor is of a client choosing an agency is the client has confidence that the agency understands what needs to happen in order for the needle to move, whatever that needle is, whether it's helping us expand markets, whether it's more sales, whether it's figuring out how to grow the brand but not lose any sales, right? Because the brand, if you're going to move your media over to brand, then what do we do about all of our sale, our performance marketing? Whatever it is, that needle, the way that, however the client counts it, they need to know that the agency gets and understands how they're going to measure success for the business and can bring solutions that they can show how those solutions might help them get closer. So it's strategy. Strategy is the essence of the winning.
And how important is chemistry?
Well, chemistry can disqualify you if it's bad chemistry. And that can be true both on the client side and the agency side. If a client acts crappy, agencies will withdraw from reviews. We've had that happen only a handful of times, but I mean so it's incumbent on both clients and agencies to date well and be nice all along the way. But the chemistry thing, it's rare that it's the reason that a client says no, because it's rare that it blows up in a pitch. It's just, we're still in early dating days, right?
Everyone's on their best behavior.
Everyone's on their best behavior. Yes, I agree with that. But it can be that they liked someone a little more than someone else, or I'll tell you that they all want to meet their account director. They all want to know who's going to be my day-to-day person. And that can be a big differentiator. If they don't feel like the account person, we did do a review not too long ago where an agency got eliminated because the day-to-day person and the day-to-day team just didn't seem up to the challenge. And the pitch team was great, but when they met the day-to-day team, they just didn't have the confidence in that team, and they were eliminated. So it can happen.
After sitting through hundreds of reviews, what do clients complain about the most that might be not on the written feedback, but off the record?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the biggest one is when an agency simply hasn't done the work to understand the client. I mean, there's a lot of other little things like that clients may complain about, but I think I think that's because there's such a disappointment. This is so important. The pitch process, finding a new agency, is so important to the client. They literally the client can get fired eventually for selecting the wrong agency, not necessarily because of that selection, but because the rest of the business didn't respond as important as it was supposed to, et cetera, right? And so this is so terribly important to them that they are hoping that an agency brings their best, that an agency does the due diligence to really get under their skin, to understand what their business issue is, to solve that issue. When the pitch itself doesn't deliver on the expectation in ways like they clearly didn't understand the issue, or they didn't do the strategy work, or they didn't understand the culture, or frankly even the terminology of the client, all those little things that make it seem like, wow, you haven't been paying attention, that it doesn't feel good, and certainly doesn't lead to a win.
What do brands wish agencies would stop doing immediately?
Yeah, so I think with existing clients, there are a couple of things that really bother them about what the agency is doing. One is a bait and switch on the scope, where they agree on a scope of work and suddenly what they agreed to, everything that actually gets them there is going to be extra now.
All these upcharges. Yeah.
right? So all the upcharge, all that nickel and diming, constantly changing, that drives clients crazy. I think also the poor account service is the primary reason that agencies lose their piece of business. That's usually the reason that clients change, but also getting complacent around strategy. We will hear clients say to us, they haven't brought me new strategy since they pitched this business.
Wow.
I don't think they've thought about the strategy or the target audience since the day they pitched. And that's another big reason. And that really bugs clients.
The industry landscape's changed so much, right? And we're talking about obviously AI. So many brands have leaned into results and performance marketing, maybe sometimes at the sake of brand building. That's coming back, I know. But just talk a little bit about where we are today versus how it used to be.
I think if you exclude global giant enterprise clients and global giant holdcos from the conversation, which for a moment, which I actually think it's fine because it leaves most of the clients and most of the agencies that we can talk about. I don't think things have changed that much, and they never change as rapidly as we all think they do. So AI is a good example. Of course, everybody is experimenting with AI, whether you're on the client side or on the agency side. However, it's not ready for prime time to run an account or to run a communications plan. And a lot of it is still in the test and learn stage. And so, yes, clients expect their agencies to be up to speed and to be, innovating, but they're still largely selecting agencies the same way they ever did. And they're still focused on what their business issues are. And so the AI, for example, becomes one of the tools that they use, that an agency or their own teams use to help solve for those business issues, just like 50 years ago, an IBM Selectric was this amazing new piece of technology that a creative could use to write out a script.
Okay, so let's talk about solving a business problem. The problem you're hoping your book solves is improving agencies and making them less, self-centered, right? If the agency just fixed one thing, what do you think that one thing would be?
Well, it depends what the problem is. So, I mean, I can't choose just one thing because for every agency, it's different. So for an agency that's well positioned, it's not positioning. If they're, if it's in the RFP, if it's in the pitch phase, it's something else. So it's really hard to select just one thing. But overall, I think the biggest mistake that agencies make in terms of new business is not showing up to the world in a way that's interesting or clear to prospects. Because you have to get on the list. Have to get whatever that list is. If it's just a small business owner who's decided he wants to advertise it, he's going to make a list. Everybody makes a list. We make a list. Clients make lists. But clients don't know the names of any agencies. When we ask a client at the beginning of a review, are there any agencies you'd like us to consider? They can't name any 95% of the time.
I know Stephen made this point when we talked before. We're in our own world because we're reading the trades and looking at all the ad age lists, and
they're reading their publications.
Right, we're reading all of ours, and we're like, oh, every CMO is looking at this, but really they have no idea who the agencies are, right?
Right. So you've got to figure out. You have to do a content program so that you get noticed. If someone gets to your website, think of that as an at bat. Every time a prospect comes to your website, that is an at bat. And if you whiff, you're out of the game. So if you don't show up in a way that makes it easy for a client to understand who you are and what you do and what kind of agency you are and what's special about you, you're not getting on that list and you just wasted the at bat. So I think that's what I choose.
But I think this notion of overall, there are agencies, a handful of agencies that have bigger brands than their agency, but most agencies are actually bigger than their brand and this goes back to what Robin said, which about how CMOs can't name very many agencies. Marketers can't name very many agencies unaided. And so up until the actual review itself, and you've been invited, the work of creating a brand for your agency acting like a brand, as Oliver McAteer would say, is so critically important to your ability to have a reliable pipeline, to have the kind of opportunities you want. And it frankly is it's probably one of the areas that agencies by and large are weakest at.
They don't do the work for themselves that they do for their clients.
Exactly. And then of course, much of the book gets into the fact that even if they do that work, then the pitch doesn't necessarily go very well because they didn't do that part of the work well. They didn't understand the client well enough. They didn't do the due diligence.
Why are they so bad at the Q&A sessions? It's such a specific question, but I just noticed in my experience, those are always so lackluster.
So the ones that go really badly are, there's two big problems. One is if they don't prepare. Well, there's three problems. If they don't prepare, so they come and they're just going to wing it. I like to think I'm really good enough at things that I can just wing them, but don't rely on being good enough. Prepare your questions in advance. And you'd be surprised at how many agencies just show up and they're going to come up with questions. And honestly, they're all over the place. They don't make any sense. And it's usually over long before the hour is finished. So that's number one. Number two is having too many questions and not prioritizing the questions. So they come with this list that's this long, and then they can only get through the first third, but the really important questions were at the bottom. It's like, oh, shoot. So that's a problem. And then the third is when an agency wants to make a fun thing happen during the Q&A, and we're going to design an interactive exercise where everybody's going to do a discovery session in the Q&A. And I got to tell you that usually they are just dismally bad, but even when they're okay, the client still says, are we going to have to do another one of those? Or are we actually going to get to just talk to each other from here forward? So it's just, people just try too hard. It's just a Q&A. It's a chance for you to ask really smart questions where you can prove that you know something because you ask good questions, that you've done your homework, and you can also learn a lot.
Kind of picking up on this point, you talk a lot about being prospect friendly in the pitch room. What constitutes being prospect friendly?
It's a big question, and it starts with before you're in the pitch room. You've listened, you've asked really solid questions, you've done some prep work and some research to really understand what's going on in their category, what's going on with their company, what's going on with their brand. You've listened to the earnings calls, so you know what the CEO and the CFO are saying about the business, and so you have a sense before you ever get into the room about what the business challenges are, how they think about their business, and how that might lead to marketing opportunities and solutions for them. Once you're in the room, it's a continuation of that. So it used to be the first 30 minutes of a presentation, the agency would talk about themselves, and then somebody would say, well, enough about us. And the clients are all sleeping at this point. Today, it's probably the first 10 minutes for the most part. And they still will say, oh, no, it's enough about us. But it was enough about you guys before you started talking because you got in the room somehow.
Right.
They
know who you are because you got in the room. So you can do a one-page recap and that's it.
No, there's no recap. There's no recap. The format is you make sure you understand the challenges. You're on the same page about what the business issue is. And then you help start talking about how you're going to better understand it, the research you've done, how you're going to solve it. At some point, they may ask specifics about your agency because they're leaning in. And then you answer those specifics. You don't go on another 10 or 20 minute presentation about everything there is to know about the agency.
They want to know you're great at solving their problem. Not how great the agency is and all the other problems you solved before.
You should have written the book.
Well, I'm reading the book. Believe me, I'm using a highlighter. Um, does this matter at all in a pitch? What is your what would you recommend? What's your favorite direction? It's like, why do you care what I think? I'm bringing ideas I like to you, and you have to be the arbiter and decide. Why do they always ask that at the end of a pitch?
Yeah, I think they do it for a lot of reasons, ranging from being nice to being really keenly interested in what the agency, how the agency thinks, what their opinion is. But what I would also suggest is that you can use that question to your advantage. So if somebody asked, if I'm not a creative, I don't have an agency, but if somebody asked me that question, I was in your shoes, I think I would put a heavy emphasis on, yes, proclaiming what I thought was going to work best, but also telling them why. It's the why that's really important. So remember, Mr. Prospect, your problem is this, where our strategy identified this insight. This work does the X, Y, and Z to deliver on that insight. It's different from competition. We tested it with consumers and they love it. They spark to the idea. We think there's a platform that can really do extra, really work really hard for you, or whatever that, but I think this is another area where agencies underperform often, which is explaining why their work should work, and therefore which ones they really recommend. It's the why, it's not the which one.
I'm trying to always figure out the tone and pitches of being really confident and believing in the work versus being flexible and open. These are ideas we have now, but we'll work with you to come up with new ones or refine them. Is it just client based on each client? Do some clients like a little more assurance? Do some clients want flexibility? Do you have to suss that out ahead of time, or is there a thread there?
I think I think all clients want both of those things, to be honest. But I think the way to get there is to say that what we're presenting to you today has been done in a bit of a vacuum, because a pitch is an unnatural act. We're developing strategy and insights, and then creative from that strategy and insights with very little or no input from you, the client. So what we're going to present today will likely not be 100% correct, but what we want to show you is how we think and how we get to great strategy that gets to great insights, that gets to just kick-ass, amazing, effective creative. So what we're going to show you today, we feel really good about and confident in, and we'll share our perspective and point of view. And then once we have your feedback, we'll know exactly where to go from there. That's the way to present it. And then present your work with 100% confidence that you can pull that red thread all the way through from your strategy, through your insights, from your data and your strategy and your insights into the creative and then your media that you're going to show how it's going to get to the business results in the end. And you pull that through and they're putty in your hands because they love that confidence. They want someone in that's going to go to battle with them, that they feel like that's the strongest. What I tell clients is choose the smartest people you meet today. We're going to do a pitch at the very beginning and we have a briefing and they're going to see 4 agencies in the day. I tell them, choose the smartest people. That's your best group.
Do you think in the future, will there be same number of agencies, more agencies?
Every year there are more agencies, whether it's 5% increase in independent agencies, 7%, 4%. There's more every year. More come into the business than exit the business.
It's been pretty consistent since we started, but it'll change, it'll morph. So we're seeing, for instance, with IPG and Omnicom, that merger, we're losing some iconic brands. They just go away. And we no longer have, FCB will be gone. It's a stunning thing to think about. Young and Rubicam no longer exists. So it will change over time. The thing about advertising agencies is there's no barrier to entry. Anyone can start an agency on any day of the week whenever they want to. So there will always be more. I think, but it'll shuffle. I don't know that we'll get a net gain, or if it'll just be the long tail. The long tail is where the noise is. That's where it's so noisy, and that's where clients feel completely paralyzed by, how do I choose? There's so many. When I Google, I find all these agency names. It just worked with a client that said, you guys didn't bring us these 3 agencies. We used ChatGPT, but you didn't bring these 3. Well, because they don't do what you want. Even though you use ChatGPT, you found them and they're not right for this. But so you can find agency names all day long, but it's noise. It's noise for the most part. They're not right for even the scope of work that the client wants. That's what makes it so hard to compete, because the clients will, if they're not using a search consultant, we've seen apples and oranges in the same pitch, apples, oranges, and shoes in the same pitch. Agencies that are so dramatically different from each other that I don't know, how would you choose between those? They do different things. So that's really where the competition gets overwhelming.
This is great. Thanks for all the insight. When you guys are not talking about work, what's your favorite thing to do together?
To do together is to do stuff with our grandchildren. We're actually getting on a plane in a couple hours to go to Denver to watch one of our granddaughters in a dance competition. That's what we choose to do with our time, and we feel really stinking lucky that they want us there and we get to go.
I love that answer. Where can people get this book so they can transform their agency new business approach?
Yeah, well, it's in all the major digital stores. Amazon's an easy place to find it. Just search for "It's Not About You" Boehler. Use the last name, and it'll take you right there.
How long did it take you guys to write this book?
5 years. We started during COVID. We had stops and starts, and then we got to a place where we had the content all in one place. So Steve did a write, and then I did a rewrite that he really hated. And then we stopped for a while because business got busier. Because during COVID, we had some downtime, as everybody else did. Then we got busy again. And then a friend challenged us. He's writing a book. We're writing a book. And he said, I'll tell you what, I'll make you a wager. Whoever finishes their book first, the other person has to buy them 4 seats to a Major League Baseball game in the city of their choice. And one of our grandsons is a really big baseball fan. So I told him about this, and then because it was Steve's turn to do the rewriting, because I had done my version. So he then was all over us. Did you win yet? Did you win yet? Did you win yet? And that's how we finished the book. So Finley Boehler.
Did you win?
Yes, we did.
Where are you going to go?
Well, of course, to see the Mariners.
All right. So check out "It's Not About You: Winning New Business in a Crowded Agency World." It just came out and it's available now. And I'm already about to start cracking it open this weekend. And I can't wait to dive in. Thanks so much for all your wisdom and for writing the book.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Soul and Science is a Mechanism podcast produced by Maggie Bowles, Ryan Tillotson, and Lily Jablonski. The show is edited by Daniel Ferreira with theme music by Kyle Merritt. And I'm your host, Jason Harris.